Today, walking into a dealership is so lonely that the echo of your footsteps sounds louder than the desperate offers. Those lots full of gleaming metal are actually graveyards of inventory that nobody wants to touch, not even with a discount. Confidence has evaporated, and today we reveal the 15 models that are rusting under the sun. Stay until the end because the last 3 cars on the list hide flaws that will wreck your bank account. Let's begin. Number 15. Nissan Titan. The Nissan Titan is the perfect example of how a brand can let a product die through sheer strategic negligence. In 2026, finding a brand new Titan on a dealership lot is like seeing a dinosaur waiting for the meteor impact. Nissan announced its official discontinuation, and from that exact moment, the resale value of these units plunged into the abyss. No one in their right mind wants to buy a full-size truck that no longer has a future in the brand's production lineup. But the problem is not just its commercial death, it's the terrible reputation it has built in its final years. Dealerships have units that have accumulated more than 250 days in inventory because buyers fear, and rightly so, being left without technical support or collision parts in the near future. Mechanically, the Titan got stuck in the past. While the competition moved toward more efficient turbocharged engines and sophisticated hybrid systems, the Titan kept betting on a 5.6-liter V8 engine that consumes fuel as if we were in 1990. But what truly killed the Titan on dealership lots are its recurring electrical failures. The body control modules are failing at alarming rates, causing the lights to turn on by themselves, the infotainment system to freeze permanently, or the emergency braking system to activate without any obstacle ahead. Imagine trying to sell a $60,000 truck that brakes by itself in the middle of the highway during a test drive. It's a logistical nightmare. Salespeople are desperate, offering free extended warranties and maintenance plans that no one accepts because the Titan's reputation as a risky and obsolete purchase is already carved in stone. It's a vehicle that was born to compete with the Ford F-150 and ended up becoming a burden that dealerships have to hide in the back of their lots so they don't scare off customers looking for an Altima or a Rogue. Number 14. Ram 1500 Classic DS Body Style. It's almost an insult to the consumer's intelligence that in 2026, Stellantis is still trying to sell the Ram 1500 Classic with the body style internally known as DS. We're talking about a platform that traces its roots back to the year 2009. In other words, a 17-year-old design still being sold as a new vehicle. Dealerships are flooded with these trucks because Stellantis mass-produced them thinking the low price would be enough to attract work fleets. But they were deeply mistaken. The work market now demands efficiency and safety, 2 things the Ram Classic simply cannot offer under current standards. Material fatigue in these new units is a constant topic of discussion in technical forums. Using tools and production molds that have been exploited for nearly 2 decades, the fit tolerances are awful. You see gaps in the body panels wide enough to fit an entire finger and structural noises that should not exist in a vehicle with 0 miles. But what really makes customers run away is the technical obsolescence of its internal components. The electrical system in these units is suffering from premature corrosion in the connectors, causing failures in the ignition system and traction control. In addition, the Pentastar 6-cylinder engine in these older configurations presents constant problems with the cam followers, a defect the brand never fully corrected and that buyers now know perfectly well. Dealerships have entire rows of these basic white trucks that nobody wants, not even with massive discounts, because people prefer a 3-year-old used truck with better technology over a new Ram that feels like a trip back in time to an era of inferior engineering. It's the hardest inventory to move because it has no clear niche. It's too old for the modern buyer and too expensive for someone looking for something truly basic. Number 13. Jeep Grand Wagoneer. If you want to see the failure of ambition turned into a luxury object, just look at the Jeep Grand Wagoneer. Jeep tried to play in the big leagues, wanting to compete head-to-head with the Cadillac Escalade and the Range Rover. But the result has been an epic disaster for dealerships. These vehicles, priced at over $100,000, are true dust magnets in showroom displays. The fundamental problem with the Grand Wagoneer is that it offers a luxury experience on paper, but toy-like reliability in reality. Dealerships are dealing with an absurd number of lemon law returns due to massive failures in the interior screen ecosystem. It has so many screens that the electrical system simply cannot handle the load, causing constant reboots and communication errors with the engine. But that's nothing compared to the air suspension. Hundreds of cases have been reported where brand new vehicles wake up leaning to one side because the airbags lose pressure or the leveling sensors fail catastrophically. Luxury buyers are demanding and do not forgive their $110,000 vehicle spending 2 weeks in the shop waiting for a part coming from Italy or Mexico. On top of that, the fuel consumption is simply obscene, even by large SUV standards. The market has realized that the Grand Wagoneer is a rushed, poorly executed product with terrifying depreciation. Dealerships are so desperate that they are removing Jeep logos from their advertising to try to give it an independent brand image, but the public isn't foolish. They know that beneath that fine leather lies Stellantis engineering that has proven to be unreliable. Having a Grand Wagoneer in inventory is like having an anchor tied around the dealership's neck. Every day that passes, it loses thousands of dollars in value, and no one wants to be the brave one who takes home a vehicle that promises status, but only delivers constant trips to the service department. Number 12. Dodge Hornet. The Dodge Hornet is perhaps the most expensive identity mistake in the brand's recent history. Sold as a sporty crossover with Italian DNA, since it is essentially an Alfa Romeo Tonale wearing a Dodge mask, this vehicle has proven to be a customer repellent at dealerships. The idea of putting a delicate Italian engine and an extremely complex software system into a vehicle aimed at Dodge's traditional audience, which usually seeks raw power and simplicity, was a recipe for disaster. Dealerships are reporting inventory days exceeding 300 days for the Hornet model, especially in its plug-in hybrid version. The problem is that the software managing the transition between the combustion engine and the electric motor is a programming nightmare. Users complain about violent jerks, total loss of power during acceleration, and error messages on the dashboard that appear and disappear like ghosts. Dodge dealership mechanics are not accustomed to dealing with such a temperamental and European electronic architecture, which prolongs repair times and infuriates the few customers who decided to give it a chance. Additionally, the price is ridiculous. A well-equipped Hornet dangerously approaches $50,000, a territory where buyers prefer brands with better reliability reputations or much larger and more capable vehicles. The interior, although it looks modern, suffers from creaks and annoying noises that buyers immediately notice during the test drive. Dealerships are trying to sell the Hornet as the future of the brand, but customers see rows of units collecting dirt on the lot and understand that this car is a failed experiment. It's not fast enough to be a sports car, not reliable enough to be a family car, and too expensive to be a logical entry-level option. It's a vehicle without a home in the market and a constant headache for business owners who watch the value of these units evaporate while waiting for a buyer who never arrives. Number 11. Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid. The Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid is the perfect example of a good idea executed in a disastrous way. In theory, a plug-in hybrid minivan is the ultimate family vehicle for the modern era. But the reality has been a succession of recalls and fire risks that have terrified both owners and dealerships. In 2026, seeing a Pacifica Hybrid on the lot is seeing a legal liability on wheels. The main problem lies in the high-voltage batteries, which have presented critical failures that can lead to thermal short circuits. There have been moments when the brand itself recommended not charging the vehicle indoors or parking it near structures for fear that it could spontaneously catch fire. Imagine being a salesperson trying to convince a mother that this is the safest car for her children, while the news talks about batteries bursting into flames in garages. Dealerships are desperate because these units not only don't sell, but they take up premium space and require special safety protocols. The propulsion system is so complex that when it fails, and it fails often, repairs can take months due to the lack of certified technicians and the shortage of specific components that must be imported. Depreciation is so violent that a Pacifica Hybrid loses nearly half its value the moment it leaves the lot, mainly because the used market considers it an unacceptable risk. It's a vehicle dealerships would rather not have, but are forced to display due to corporate contracts, becoming monuments to the failure of rushed electrification. Number 10. Chevrolet Colorado/GMC Canyon 2.8-liter turbodiesel. There was a time when General Motors' 2.8-liter turbodiesel engine was seen as the crown jewel for towing enthusiasts and fuel economy seekers in mid-sized trucks. However, in 2026, this engine has become the biggest headache for service departments. The disaster centers around the emissions systems known as the diesel particulate filter, DPF, and diesel exhaust fluid, DEF. These systems are so restrictive and prone to failure that they have left thousands of new trucks in limp mode, limiting speed to barely 30 km per hour in the middle of the road. The sensors constantly get clogged, and the regeneration cycle fails if the truck is not driven at highway speeds for extended periods, something many urban users simply do not do. Maintaining these systems is prohibitively expensive. Replacing the exhaust after-treatment system can easily cost more than $5,000, and this often happens just after the limited warranty expires. Dealerships have Colorado and Canyon units with this engine that have been sitting for months collecting dust because mid-sized truck buyers have heard the horror stories about repair bills. In addition, the complexity of this engine requires specific oil and expensive filters that raise daily operating costs to levels that wipe out any fuel savings. It is an engine designed to meet extremely strict emissions regulations, but one that sacrificed reliability in the process. Today, customers prefer the gasoline turbocharged versions, leaving the diesel variants as heavy anchors in inventory that dealers must liquidate at clearance prices, losing money on every transaction just to get them off the lot. Number 9. Ram 2500 6.4-liter Hemi engine. The Ram 2500 with the 6.4-liter Hemi engine should be the queen of heavy-duty work, but in 2026, it is battling a tarnished reputation caused by design flaws the brand refuses to fully acknowledge. The infamous phenomenon known as the Hemi tick has become a curse for dealerships. This persistent metallic noise is often the symptom of an imminent failure of the lifters and camshaft. The problem worsens exponentially because of the cylinder deactivation system designed to save fuel. Under heavy load conditions, this system causes uneven wear and lubrication issues within the engine's internal components. Heavy-duty truck buyers do not want a system that shuts off cylinders. They want absolute reliability to hold tons of equipment. Dealership lots are full of these trucks because corporate clients and contractors have switched en masse to the competition or opted for the Cummins diesel versions despite their much higher initial cost. Trying to sell a gasoline-powered Ram 2500 today is a titanic task. Buyers know that if they use the truck for what it was designed for, hard work, there is a very high probability that the engine will develop catastrophic failures before reaching 100,000 kilometers. Lots are packed with these units that consume fuel voraciously and offer questionable reliability. Sales managers are offering discounts that seem unreal, but even so, the stigma surrounding the 6.4-liter Hemi engine in heavy load applications is so strong that the trucks remain parked for months, becoming an unsustainable financial burden for any business. Number 8. Ford F-150 Lightning. The fall of the Ford F-150 Lightning is perhaps the most dramatic story of this chapter. What began as an electric revolution in 2022 has turned into an inventory nightmare in 2026. The initial enthusiasm has evaporated, leaving Ford with thousands of units that nobody wants to buy at current prices. The problem is not only that charging infrastructure remains inadequate, but that the Lightning has proven to have physical limitations that truck buyers are unwilling to accept. In cold climates, battery range drops by as much as 40%, making it useless for long-distance work across much of the country. Additionally, when towing a trailer, the driving range becomes so ridiculously short that it forces constant stops at chargers that often do not work or are occupied. Dealerships are stuck with trucks carrying sticker prices above $80,000 that suffer an instant depreciation of $20,000 the moment they leave the showroom. No one wants to buy a used Lightning, which destroys lease values and scares off new buyers. There have been reports of units sitting so long that their 12-volt batteries have died, and the software systems require massive updates before the vehicle can even power on for a test drive. The market has realized that, for the real truck user, electricity is still not the answer. Ford lots are a sea of shiny Lightnings that have become the symbol of an overly optimistic gamble by the brand. Dealers are begging Ford to stop production, yet assembly lines continue to ship units that end up collecting snow and dust in remote lots, waiting for a market that has simply turned its back on them. Number 7. Mercedes-Benz EQE/EQS. Mercedes-Benz's electric lineup is the rolling testimony of how a legendary brand can alienate its most loyal customer base in record time. In 2026, the EQE and EQS models have become the absolute kings of piled-up inventory, with days on lot exceeding 300 days in many regions. The problem began with an aesthetic that the traditional Mercedes customer simply rejects. That teardrop design, intended to improve aerodynamics, eliminated the presence and elegance that defined the brand with the star, making a $100,000 car look like a generic household appliance from a distance. But the real disaster is inside. The software is a nightmare of instability. screens going black mid-journey, driver assistance systems issuing phantom alerts, and an interface so complex that it distracts more than it helps. Customers who once bought an S-Class for its mechanical reliability and status now find themselves with a giant iPad on wheels plagued by constant glitches. Dealerships are struggling to move these units even with lease incentives that resemble total liquidation. The used market is even harsher. Depreciation on these luxury electric models is so aggressive that many owners find themselves owing far more than the car is worth in less than 2 years. It is a failure of identity and technical execution that has left Mercedes with thousands of units that nobody wants, not even with the star on the hood. Number 6. Lincoln Aviator. The Lincoln Aviator represents the ongoing struggle of American brands to compete in the luxury segment without having quality control that matches the price they demand. In 2026, this model has accumulated such an extensive recall history that informed buyers simply walk past it. The most serious problem lies in the 10-speed transmission, which has shown erratic behavior, harsh shifts, and premature failures that leave the vehicle immobilized. Added to this is an interior build quality that does not justify the $70,000 or $80,000 Lincoln is asking. Panels that creak, trim that comes loose, and an infotainment system that feels outdated compared to European and Japanese competitors. Dealerships have rows of Aviators that were returned by dissatisfied customers after just a few months of use. It is a vehicle that looks imposing in brochures, but feels fragile in daily use. The lack of confidence in long-term durability has destroyed its resale value. In a market where luxury consumers seek peace of mind, the Aviator offers uncertainty, and that is reflected on Lincoln dealer lots, where these SUVs pile up while the brand desperately tries to clean up its image with marketing campaigns that fail to hide the underlying engineering flaws. Number 5. Nissan Ariya. The Nissan Ariya is the classic case of a vehicle that arrived late to a party that was already ending. Nissan, which was a pioneer with the Leaf, took far too long to launch its second major electric vehicle, and by the time the Ariya finally reached dealerships in large numbers, the market was already saturated, and supply chain problems had exhausted consumer patience. In 2026, the Ariya is a ghost in the sales records. Dealerships are so desperate to move inventory that they have started using these SUVs as demo or courtesy vehicles for any service customer, hoping someone will fall in love with electric driving and decide to buy one. However, real buyers are scarce. The price is too high for what it offers, especially when compared to alternatives that have better charging infrastructure and more advanced software. In addition, the Ariya has suffered from strange failures in the battery thermal management system, limiting fast charging speeds in anything less than perfect conditions. Salespeople report that it is extremely difficult to close a deal when customers compare the Ariya's specifications with models from newer brands offering more range and technology for the same money. The result is a stagnant vehicle, a technological gem no one asked for, now languishing under the sun on Nissan lots, waiting for discounts the brand resists but the market demands. Number 4. Maserati Grecale. If there is one name that evokes passion, but in 2026 inspires financial terror, it is Maserati. The Grecale was launched as the brand's savior, the volume model that would flood the streets and rescue the Trident's finances. Reality has been a brutal crash into the wall of depreciation. A Maserati Grecale can lose up to 60% of its original value in the first year. This is not just a loss of money, it is a financial hemorrhage. Luxury buyers have learned the hard way that Maserati electronics remain unreliable, with engine sensor failures and comfort systems that stop working without warning. Maserati dealerships are operating at negative margins just to try to clear space for next year's models. The problem is that a customer willing to spend $80,000 on a small SUV prefers the security of a Porsche Macan or the technology of a BMW. The Grecale has fallen into a limbo where it is not reliable enough to be a daily driver, nor special enough to be a collector's item. Seeing a Grecale sitting in a used car inventory is like seeing a danger warning. Appraisers offer insulting trade-in values because they know the car will sit for months before finding a buyer unaware enough to take the risk. It is the ultimate example of how a brand can destroy its own value by failing to prioritize build quality over Italian design. Number 3. Volkswagen ID.4. The Volkswagen ID.4 was born with the promise of being the Beetle of the electric era, a car for the people that would democratize zero-emissions mobility. However, in 2026, it has become the biggest headache for the German brand's salespeople. The main issue that has blown up sales is an infotainment system that is, quite simply, an operational disaster. Users report screens freezing while using navigation, touch controls without backlighting that are impossible to use at night, and response times that feel like a tablet from 15 years ago. But it is not just the software. The quality of the interior materials has pushed away Volkswagen's most loyal fans. Accustomed to solid, well-assembled interiors, buyers now find hard plastics that creak and a sense of cost-cutting that does not match a price tag between $45,000 and $55,000. Dealerships have hundreds of units collecting dust because word of mouth has been devastating. Resale values have collapsed because no one wants to inherit a vehicle whose electronic issues run so deep that even brand technicians struggle to diagnose them. Volkswagen tried to sell a vision of the future, but delivered a product that feels unfinished, and the market has responded by leaving the keys hanging on the dealership board. Number 2. Land Rover Discovery. The Land Rover Discovery takes second place on this list for a reason that has haunted the brand for decades, but that in 2026 has reached a critical point: its legendary reputation for spending more time on a tow truck than on the road. This vehicle is a masterpiece of engineering when it works, but the problem is that it almost never does so flawlessly for long. Air suspension failures, complex oil leaks, and an electrical architecture that seems to short-circuit at the mere sight of a puddle have turned the Discovery into the terror of service departments. Warranty costs are so high that they are crushing dealership profitability, and some dealers even prefer not to accept these units as trade-ins out of fear they will never resell them. Depreciation is so violent that buying a new Discovery is literally watching $30,000 disappear the moment the tires touch the curb outside the dealership. It is a beautiful and capable vehicle, but in a world where time is the most valuable asset, no one wants to spend theirs waiting for a mechanic to find the latest faulty sensor that has thrown the SUV into emergency mode. Number 1. Audi A6 2026 edition. We arrive at number 1, and here we find the Audi A6 in its 2026 edition, a vehicle that represents the end of an era in the saddest possible way. The A6 is the perfect example of a car without identity trapped in a market that no longer recognizes it. In a world where consumers only want imposing SUVs or pure electric vehicles packed with cutting-edge technology, the traditional luxury sedan has been left orphaned. The Audi A6 is collecting dust in record amounts because no one knows exactly who it was built for. It does not have the excitement of a sports car, it does not have the versatility of an SUV, and it does not have the aura of novelty of the brand's own electric models. Dealerships are offering discounts of up to $15,000, and still customers walk straight toward the Q7 or Q8. The Audi A6 is the epitaph of a dying category. It is an excellent car in its mechanical engineering, but irrelevant in its commercial concept. Buying one today is purchasing a direct ticket to massive financial loss, making it the most difficult vehicle to sell in the entire industry in 2026.